Hey Tone, how are you?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
All right. Yeah, let's see how this time slot works out. I am literally in the middle of the I am currently in the middle of the woods
Oh, nice.
try, trying to start a fire to start smoking meat. Got my headphones on, so should be able to do this.
To be honest, the headphones are clear. Do you normally use these ones?
Yeah, I normally use these.
Today they sound pretty clear because normally there's a little bit of disturbance, but today it sounds really, really good.
Well, no, I don't normally use headphones. I usually
Ah,
just go without headphones.
yeah. Well, now we know we need to use your headphones because it's very clear.
Oh, that's good to know.
So how's the week been, Tone? Any traveling, any conferences this week?
I'm going to be traveling, not really conferences. I'm kind of done with conferences. I'm tired of conferences. Um, I'll be going to consensus, but I'll be going there to play poker, not to go to the actual conference part.
Well, most of the conferences are poker for you. I know that.
Yeah.
The point of going to the conference is basically to get on the table and have some fun. Lovely. Let's give everyone 2 more minutes, Tone. Let's get a few people in, and then we can start off.
All right, sounds good. Hopefully, Joe calls. It is a holiday weekend in the U.S., so we'll see how many people can join, how many people are around.
Yeah, I mean, I was supposed to, yeah, like we are supposed to go for us. The weather is really nice, so we were thinking of going out as well. That's why I had to prepone it to 10 a.m., which is a new time for us. We normally don't do it at this time. So yeah. All right, we have a few people. Tone, let's start off. Guys, welcome to the Financial Summit Spaces. This is our weekend space of the two. Like the last one we had was on Wednesday after the NVIDIA earnings and everything came out. Very successful space we had. We talked about the markets and a lot happened after that. So let me first introduce the Financial Summit. The Financial Summit is a yearly event, and the next one is going to be held in Maldives in 2025, March. We basically get together for 5 days in a luxurious resort, and we basically, well, the aim of the whole conference, which it's not really a conference, it's an event, is to educate, learn, and explore different fields of finance and understand how different fields fit together. In the last conference, we talked from crypto to crypto security, normal your S&P markets, your trading and strategies, and ended up on talking about how Tone predicted uh, the world economy a while back, how BRICS is going to become powerful going along. So a lot of different discussion and a lot of people from different fields of life come together, from traders, hedge fund managers, VCs, to doctors, nutritionists, and a lot of different people. So if you want to sign up, go to thefinancialsummit.com, visit the website, and book your place for Maldives, and it's going to be fun. So yeah, that's my pitch for the space, as it always is. Tone, how is Bitcoin looking to you? A week has passed. We saw some downwards price action, then a nice little recovery with the Ethereum ETF being approved. What are you looking at? Starting off with Bitcoin, and then yeah, a lot more to dive into.
Well, clearly the Ethereum ETF getting approved was a bit of a surprise for all of us. Even the more optimistic people like Joe Calasari thought that it would not get approved on this first go around. It would take a little bit of time to get approved. It wouldn't happen on the first shot. So that's what a lot of us expected. And yet it got approved. It certainly got a little bit of a bump for Bitcoin by getting approved. I'm not really sure what it did to the Ethereum charts. I'm not in front of a computer at the moment. I may plug the computer in a little bit. So anything that involves me looking at a live chart may have to wait a bit. I think the bigger news I think the bigger news is going to be on the political side of the spectrum, based on what Trump said, not only about Ross Ulbricht, but also about self custody and being kind of positive with Bitcoin itself. And I don't know if that's a topic you had for the day, but if it's not, we definitely need to add it as a topic for the day. Hello? What's going on?
Oh, sorry, Tone. I was talking on mute.
Okay.
Which topic was it?
Okay.
Can you come again?
Uh, no, I didn't say anything. Did you guys hear everything I said?
Yeah, I was. You were talking about some topic that we should add for the day. I mean, I'm just going through my document as well. Which topic was it? I basically missed out on that.
What Trump said about Bitcoin and Ross Ulbricht.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't have the whole bit, but I do have Trump and BTC as like a topic. We can start off over there, like basically Donald Trump, because honestly, as a president who's running for office, as a ex-president who's running for office, having that sort of a stance is very very bullish for crypto and the sentiment around it. So first of all, what are your views, and then I can read out what he said to the audience so that they are aware of it as well.
Do we want to kick off with that topic?
Yeah, sure. We can kick off with that. We can start off with that, and then there are like the thing is ETH ETF approval. Even though I agree with you, it was kind of a surprise for a lot of people, even the optimistic one. There was a lot of signals pointing towards the ETH ETF tone, like how SEC was asking everyone to be like submitting now, like the similar way which happened in Bitcoin, right? But if you saw, the ETH approval was not taken in kind by people. Like it was a proper sell the news event. Tone, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
I was saying that
Did
Ethereum
it,
ETF was a sell the news event. So what's your take on that?
so it was a sell the news event. I mean, that's surprising. It's not surprising. I mean, I expected it to be the sell the news event. There was no other way for it to really go. It went up way too much in preparation for the ETF. So the only direction it could really go would be down. There was pretty much nowhere else for it to go.
No, 100%. But as of now, like if you're looking at the weekly candle, and obviously I know that you don't treat Ethereum and all these other coins as crypto as a whole. You treat them as companies. But even if we treat them as a company, it ETF approval that basically kind of now says that, and all the documentation that was released by SEC did not contain the word that Ethereum is a security or anything. Like now they have accepted that Ethereum is not a security, and I think this will lead to them pulling out of a lot of cases as well. And the price action, Ethereum is up on the weekly time frame about, let me tell you, on the weekly it's up around 25%, breaking out of a very nice inverse head and shoulder pattern, looking good from a perspective of technicals. But I do believe Ethereum ETF is not going to be positive for Ethereum in the longer run. It's a very negative news for them. So how do you see the inflows into Ethereum? Number one, so my two questions are: number one, do you see the Ethereum, all the inflows that will come into Ethereum to be, catered from the Bitcoin ETF, or do you think it will be new investors going into Ethereum? Number two, with no staking allowed, and if Ethereum spot ETF, these ETFs are going to accumulate Ethereum, and then for it's a proof of stake at the end of the day, Ethereum. So if that sort of a thing happens, how do you see the transaction prices of Ethereum going up? You're muted, Tone.
Those are really, really good questions. So let's start with the first question that you said. What kind of people are going to invest in the Ethereum ETF? The people that don't understand Bitcoin. Those are the people that are going to invest into the Ethereum ETF. So people that have already bought the Bitcoin ETF and actually have no clue why they bought the Bitcoin ETF. They basically bought the Bitcoin ETF because they think they're going to make money. These are your, unsophisticated investors, even though they may have a lot of money. So, according to the US government, they are sophisticated, smart investors. But if they are buying into the Ethereum ETF, that means they don't actually understand the crypto technology. They don't understand blockchain. They don't understand decentralization. They don't really know why they bought the Bitcoin ETF to begin with. They just know that they made money on buying the Bitcoin ETF, and they just want to.
Tone, you there? Looks like we have lost Tone.
No, no, I'm still here.
Yeah, you're there. Okay, you basically
Yeah.
went quiet. We didn't hear
Okay.
anything.
So, did you hear the part where I said which kind of people are going to be buying into the Bitcoin ETF, the Ethereum ETF? Sorry.
Yeah, Ethereum ETF. You can start from there. Like what? Because we lost you in the middle somewhere.
Okay. Basically, people that don't understand what Bitcoin is, people that don't understand decentralization, people don't understand why Bitcoin is worth $70,000. The people that were buying into the Bitcoin ETF because they think they're only going to make money out of it and have absolutely no clue why Bitcoin is worth what it's worth. These are the people that are going to be buying the Ethereum ETF. It's not going to be anyone that understands this technology. Now, as far as the companies providing the Ethereum ETF, they don't need to understand it. Like BlackRock just wants to make money from uh, from creating the product. They make money on fees, so they don't really have to. They don't care. They're going to make their money on fees one way or another, and so that's the kind of people that will be buying.
Tone, we lost you again.
Bad connection here, so
Yeah, we lost you this time on that. Those are the kind of people that would be buying, and then it
okay.
went cold.
All right, let me put my phone a little closer to the Wi-Fi signal here. Let me just check my Wi-Fi signal. Okay, no, it's fine. So now, which kind of people? Now, the other question is, what are they going to do with all that Ethereum? Well, they can't use the Ethereum for any kind of earned product. Ethereum is a proof of stake, so I'm assuming they could be earning more Ethereum by holding Ethereum, right? That is very, very possible that they're going to be earning Ethereum by holding Ethereum. And uh, so that would be good for those holding the ETF. This is why proof of stake is so dangerous. But, it doesn't really matter. Like, no one needs or uses Ethereum. So I have no idea what's going to happen to their transactions. The price of Ethereum may rise marginally, but over time, didn't another one of these silly blockchains get hacked the other day, or a smart contract get hacked? Eventually, that's what's going to happen to Ethereum itself. And I really hope Wall Street learns a valuable lesson as to why they should never get involved with Ethereum to begin with.
No, makes sense. You're not on your chart, Stone, but you must have seen the charts of Bitcoin. And what are you looking at? Your green star candle was supposed to come. Is it there now?
I'm pretty sure the weekly green star candle is there, though I'm not looking at charts at the moment.
Let me put MRI and let you know. 1 second. Where is MRI gone? There you are. I don't need to change any settings, right?
I'm not sure.
Oh, I'll need to change settings. I don't have a green star candle. So yeah, you let us know when you check it out.
Yeah, no, I don't think I'm gonna have my computer up for this one. So
Okay, no worries. Later,
I'm
maybe next
pretty,
week.
I, I'm pretty sure the weekly green star candle's there.
Okay, we can do that next week. I mean, if we see a price action and a 10% candle next week, I'll be quite happy with it. I don't care if it was from a green star candle or anything. I'll care about the price at that point of time. So yeah, very happy with that. Tone, on top of that, Bitcoin has now converted the prior all-time high closes into support. We went above it. We basically hit our head on top of it a few times, and now we are bouncing off it. So we can believe that the area of 60K is going to stand, and it's going to be acting as very, very good support going forward. Do you ever see Bitcoin price trading below 60K once this bull market is over? Do you think 60K will be revisited?
I don't. At this point, I think 60K is, and I even said it, I texted to a couple of friends of mine just when Bitcoin was like at 63 or something like that, and then it pulled back to 61, and then it never even hit 60. And it was 63 before the 61 pullback, probably about a week ago. I texted a couple of my friends. I'm like, guys, you better buy it. I don't think it's going below 60K ever again. I like where we are right now. I like where it's holding. And it is interesting that once we start talking about the political side of things, like the Trump news and how the Trump announcement didn't really make the price of Bitcoin go much higher, I thought that was kind of interesting, but also pretty telling that let's transition to that. So I do think that what Trump said about Bitcoin is very, very bullish, but the market did not rise very much on that news and Trump being so positive on Bitcoin. And that's because the market, nor myself, we don't believe him. Trump said that he would pardon Ross Ulbricht. I don't really believe that either. I don't think he's going to do it. Like the deep state really wants that guy in prison for the rest of his life. And I think Trump is just saying that he's positive on Bitcoin and you can keep yourself custody and all this stuff because it doesn't hurt him in the polls to say that. So here's an example. If Trump comes out, you know, 100% pro-Israel and anti-Palestine, that hurts him in the polls the way it's hurting Joe Biden. If Trump comes out pro-Palestine, anti-Israel, that also hurts him in the polls, right? So he cannot take a public position on something like Gaza, Ukraine, right? He can't even take a public position on, uh, Gaza, Israel. He can't take a public position on Russia, Ukraine. Even Trump saying he's gonna, end the war in Russia, Ukraine. That's gonna piss off a lot of people. But when it comes to Bitcoin, him picking a side and picking the pro Bitcoin side doesn't hurt him at all. There is no one that's going to say, oh, I'm not, there's no group of people, a large group of people, that will suddenly say, I hate that position. I'm not voting for Trump anymore. So Trump being pro Bitcoin is only a positive in the polls versus having a positive side and a negative side. So politicians like to stay neutral on almost every topic except a topic that tends to have everyone on the say on board, and Bitcoin is one of those topics. Uh, so it's kind of like being pro speech, right? They can all pretend to be pro speech. I remember in Obama's very first campaign for president, he was very anti-government surveillance spying. I remember his speeches, why I voted for him. He's like, no, what the NSA is doing is horrible.
Tone, we lost you again.
Back.
Yeah, you're back.
Right. So I was just saying about when Obama was campaigning for president the first time, 2008, after the Bush situation, he was campaigning on an anti-spying platform. I'm going to be anti-NSA. Government spying is bad. Remember, those were like the Snowden days. And he campaigned on ending surveillance and spying. And then he goes into all, and everyone is pros. Well, like no one is good. That's an issue where every single person will say, "Yeah, I agree." How many? There's no group of American population that's going to be, "Oh, I hate him for this issue. We need more spying." No one's going to say that. So this was an issue that every single voter is going to be happy with him saying that. Now, when he got into office, he did the complete opposite. There's even speeches of him after he became president saying how much we need more surveillance spying. And there was a famous video on YouTube that says, candidate Barack Obama debates President Barack Obama over internet spying. And it's just him on two different podiums going back and forth against himself about how it's bad and how it's good. So the Bitcoin issue for Trump is that same issue where everyone no one is going to be angry that he wants to be pro Bitcoin and pro self custody and This guy who built a website is now doing 2 life sentences. But once he gets into office, honestly, I don't think he cares or gives a shit about Bitcoin. And he's going to say, no, we have to stop money laundering. It's going to be the Barack Obama situation over NSA surveillance all over again. So I don't actually believe Trump when he says, I mean, it's good that he says this and not the opposite. But once he gets in there, I don't believe he's actually going to care to promote Bitcoin in any way whatsoever. So it's good that he's saying it, and the market isn't jumping on him saying it. So I think people really agree. It's nice that he says it, but no one actually believes it.
Makes
I see
sense. I mean,
Simon's here.
yeah,
Would love to
Simon's
have
here.
Simon weigh in.
Yeah, yeah. Before I welcome Simon, so isn't that normal though for every politician? Like that's part of their game. Like do what the people really want to hear, say what the people want to hear, and then yeah, do what you want to do. Simon, how are you doing? Very good morning.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Yeah, I'd agree with most of that. I'm still waiting for the 9/11 inquiry from Trump. I think he promised that on that Alex Jones show, um, and I think it's a similar thing. So it's an interesting that he picked the self custody point because it's kind of a reflection. So obviously he would have got the memo. He'd be looking down at where are all the large pockets of voters now, and he would obviously get deep intelligence and research. And one of the memos he would have got is, wow, there's 50 million people that own Bitcoin and crypto. And so he's got to pick like what is the most crafted, intelligent type of thing I could say to win over the 50 million votes. Well, firstly, there's a double whammy here. One is I can just accept campaign financing in Bitcoin and crypto, which is that's awesome. So it's not just a one thing. And then secondly, I also, what are the big things? So we got CBDCs. Okay, I'll be anti that. No one wants that. Self custody. Yeah, I'll go for that. And then I got to win over the Bitcoin and crypto people as well. So the statement was that I'll support Bitcoin and crypto. I'll support self custody, and I'll be anti CBDCs, which is everything that a Bitcoiner would want to hear in order to say, let's make Trump the next president of the United States. So that's 50 million people. And, Bitcoin and crypto people are very tribal. So they will vote for a president just based upon that singular issue, particularly when Biden, now we've got all this new legislation that just came through. That's got to get past Senate, and then it's got to if Biden vetoes it like he did with the accounting side for crypto accounting and sides with the SEC, then he'd look public enemy number one. So overall, it's been a big shift in Bitcoin crypto policy. I think what's interesting is the hidden things you have to be aware of. They had a end the Fed bill at the same time. What you've got to be careful of that is it's about, and they also had a no CBDC bill. But if you combine those together, you can end up with a government-backed digital currency rather than a central bank digital currency with no Fed. And that would be modern monetary theory, which is communism on a blockchain, plus the banning of, moving all of the crypto over to the centralized institutions through crypto regulations, and then a banning of self custody. So it looks like lots of good stuff, but the devil's in the detail. They also had like a little thing around making crypto investments open to non-accredited investors if they agree that it's only 10% of their income. So that would mean that an American couldn't own, like 80 or 90% of their savings in Bitcoin if they were buying through a US crypto exchange. So these are all very interesting things. And I think the main thing is that there is now a Bitcoin lobby, and it's slightly different to a normal lobby because in January 2024, my guess is that a massive chunk of politicians bought the Bitcoin ETF. And so rather than actually having to receive money from the company of Bitcoin through a lobby group, people are just buying the ETF and thinking, okay, this is a pretty good bet for me. So let's do some pro Bitcoin legislation. Let's make sure everything happens in America.
All right. Thanks for that, Simon.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to find Twitter. I was scrolling through other stuff as well. Yeah, makes sense. I mean, there's so Simon, you were talking about the Fit 21 or the other bill that he was saying that he's going to veto. Because for Fit
No,
21,
no.
I think Biden said he'll not
Previously,
veto it.
previously, my understanding was Biden vetoed an SEC accounting change veto, and then they ended up being able to mark things to market, which is a massive difference. Obviously, the micro strategy thing, and then with all, so that was a big thing. But I think he favoured the SEC in that one. But
Yeah, but
if
the
this
other one,
one
he's
gets,
saying that he'll not. I think he's saying that the Fit 21, I think, is the one that
fit,
he's saying he's happy. He's not going to veto that.
no, Fit 21. The statement was he was against it, but he won't veto it.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. I think like it's a very clear election. I do agree with both of your points, and I do understand them. That this election, even though like in the world of problems and in the world of politics, crypto might not be the biggest issue, but for some reason in this election in the United States, crypto is somehow becoming a very very major issue. And whether it's Trump who is basically looking at what Biden is doing and he's like, he's making a mistake there, I'm going to take advantage of it, or it's just the whole public that the public wants it and they have been asking questions to these parties, whatever it is, crypto is slowly steadily picking up pace in the USA, and yeah, like becoming a big issue there. So let's see how it goes and what happens there. Moving on, Tone, how are the ETF flows looking like? Because I think the next wave of buying is looking stronger and stronger or day on day. You're muted, Tone.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think the ETF flows are looking pretty good. As I said on last week's podcast, it looks like GBTC has absolutely stopped selling Bitcoin. I believe most of the week this past week, GBTC was flat once again, no inputs, no outputs. Meanwhile, BlackRock is adding a bunch of uh, Bitcoin into their treasuries. So, okay, sorry. I was watching somebody do something with an axe that I didn't really think was safe. uh, so, uh, I think next week, BlackRock may have more ETF, Bitcoin in their ETF than GBTC itself. I think that's a very, very positive development that is happening in that realm. So I think it's going to be very positive for next week. In fact, I am pretty positive going into next week for Bitcoin.
No, same
Uh,
here. Looking very, very, very good. Simon, next question, like same question, but in a different way. So the net inflow last week was around 15,000 Bitcoin, approximately, into the ETFs. And obviously, as Tone said, Grayscale is no more selling. There are no more sellers of Bitcoin. Now, we have had halving, so there's been a supply shock. Supply shock is visible now. There's the buying pressure is coming back in. The selling pressure is getting reduced. Is there any scenario that you see that could be bearish for Bitcoin at this point of time?
Yeah, so the number of Bitcoin owned by ETFs is about to hit 1 million Bitcoin. So that's the same as Satoshi at this stage. Now, whether they are traders or hodlers, I don't think I know yet. We shall see. But you'd expect over time that to go more and more institutional, and then a lot of retail stock traders learn over a 4-year cycle when they look back at their returns from selling and trading compared to if they had just held. So that would be an interesting thing to see. In terms of bearishness for Bitcoin, I think China Taiwan could be. If China had decided to reunify with Taiwan, you're talking about 90% of all the semiconductor chips in the world. That affects Bitcoin mining. That would affect ASIC manufacturing. So the relationship between US and China and the reunification with Taiwan. I know America's looking to open its new chip factories in 2025, and China might be looking to reunify this year, and that escalated this week. So I think that would be a major cataclysmic, not sure if I'm saying the right word there, for every industry, and I think Bitcoin would be included in that. I think that's the biggest bearish event that could happen at the moment.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, this was one of my topics for today, and yeah, thanks for pointing it out. So, Tone, China is basically, they've surrounded Taiwan. They have said it's a drill. There was a video that came out from the Chinese president gathering the army and all the different streams of the military forces and telling them to be ready. Like, it was a long one, and they took an oath at the end. And I'm like, okay, cool. I didn't understand anything. It was in Chinese with some subtitles, though. But this was one thing that we discussed, that the only thing stopping us as of now is that China has not yet attacked Taiwan, because that would mean all three major regions of the world are in a war. What are your views, or what is your insight from the historical point of China Taiwan, and what do you think is happening there? You're muted, Tone.
All right, I'm back. Sorry, took me a little while to unmute here. So the China-Taiwan is a really interesting situation. China has no interest in militarily coming into Taiwan, not at all. They're being forced to do so by the United States policy. And it's super, super unfortunate that it's happening that way. And so the U.S. can escalate this, or only the U.S. can escalate this. But even if they do, I don't think this would be bad for Bitcoin in any way. I still think this is going to be bullish for Bitcoin. Yes, if there's less manufacturing, there could not be as much innovation coming out in the Bitcoin world with the chips, but it's not really necessary. I mean, you don't need faster ASICs. Bitcoin is doing just fine without that. There's plenty. Mining is still doing really well, so it's not really a big deal. And so, I mean, it's going to be bad with as far as tensions in the world. But as far as affecting Bitcoin, I don't think it's going to affect Bitcoin all that much.
But from a political standpoint, Tone, I know you said that China do not want to do this, but US is forcing their hand. Like, why exactly is US forcing their hand? Like, what is the reasoning behind it?
So, honestly, I don't know. There's lots of crazy conspiracy theories, and the one that starts to make the most sense over and over and over is that the United States is collapsing economically from its death. And the only way, like if the US actually collapses on its own, then politicians will be held accountable. But if these politicians start some kind of a war after provoking China, and then shit collapses, they're going to say, well, it wasn't our fault, China did it. Similar to what they're doing with Russia. The other reason is the United States is basically losing its single dominant control over the world, which they've had since 1990. Basically, since the collapse of Russia, the United States has been the single hegemon, as very good analysts like to call it. And now that's collapsing. And they're struggling with handling the fact that we're going to have a multipolar world where there's going to be three major powers: Russia, US, and China. And the United States can't come to grips with that. The US politicians can't come to grips with that. And they're now starting trouble. I mean, for some reason, the United States believes that they should own the South China Sea. And China is now in a position where they will look weak in front of their people if they don't stand up to the U.S. So China has to stand up to the U.S. Uh, Otherwise, they will look weak, and they can have a revolution in China. Why do we have such a weak leader? We have a strong military, we have a strong economy. We need to have control of the waters around our country. Why are we still bowing down to the United States? And you have this dynamic where the more America pushes Taiwan uh, for independence. And again, remember, the person that is currently elected the leader of Taiwan is a U.S. placed person. That person studied in the U.S. That person was backed by the United States. It's the same thing United States has recently done in Thailand and the Philippines. And meanwhile, countries that don't have leaders that were, U.S. generated, like Myanmar, like uh, like Vietnam, these countries, the United States is trying to do that. I mean, they're causing huge problems in Myanmar because the leader is not U.S. backed. So that's kind of what happens. And China is just standing up to it in their own backyard. And I don't think this is going to go away. I think the U.S. is going to push more and China is going to push back more. Uh, Now, coming back to Bitcoin, I think this will be good for Bitcoin and bad for the world as time passes.
Okay, makes sense. Simon, any views on that from your side?
Yeah, so there's several things that are like coming together that make this a bit time sensitive, I say. So, firstly, if China took control of Taiwan and implemented any kind of blockade, that would take down Apple, that would take down Microsoft, that would take down Amazon, that would take down the Department of Justice. They rely upon those chips for fighter jets. They rely upon them for drones. They rely upon them for every single iPhone, iPad, every single laptop. And it is the biggest risk to America's economy that exists today. So China's been selling off a lot of their treasuries. The BRICS corridor is kind of getting stronger than ever. You've got this allegiance between Iran, Russia, and China, and the demographics in China suck. So they've got an aging population, they still got a hangover from their one China policy, and they don't have much immigration. Whereas America, the demographics are a lot better. They've got lots of immigration to look after, the boomers as they come into retirement, and it's also obviously oil independent. So you've got these two superpowers, but obviously America is at the end of a debt cycle with over 120% debt to GDP. So this one country, Taiwan, has now become geopolitically the most important country in the world because it controls the backbone of artificial intelligence, even ASICs and Bitcoin. So pretty much everything we know it as today is dependent upon the outcome of Taiwan. US has to defend Taiwan and China has to reunify. So China's always said that it will, but when will it? Has always been the question. And so because of that aging demographics, they probably need to make a move fairly soon. And at the same time, US always knew this was a risk. So Biden put together a bill to invest about 54 million in trying to revive the chip manufacturing industry. But Taiwan is investing at double the rate. And so this is probably the weakest point that may keep the world in peace or may create World War III. And it's kind of the final point. And so in terms of, I create, if anyone's interested, on my Twitter, I dug deep into this and thought about impacting Bitcoin. But obviously, Bitcoin's got enough security right now, so I think it would send the stock markets into a wild frenzy if it were to happen, theoretically. It would be an absolute disaster for defense, for government. and it would put a significant amount of power away from America and over to China if they did reunify. And so if they are getting more and more concerned, and so when Biden started putting 100% export tariffs, and they started hedging against Taiwan, Taiwan then gets concerned about their relationship with America, because the fact that the whole world is dependent upon Taiwan is what they call the Silicon Shield in Taiwan. So the Biden policy has scared the shit out of Taiwan, and so they then would have to say, even though they're more ideologically aligned with American defense, the American defense is being broken down because America's looking to go silicon chip, chip independent. And so Taiwan may have no choice but to reunify, and China may have no choice but to reunify. And so when do you pick to do that? Well, you pick the moment when there is escalation with Iran, escalation with Russia, and before America launches its next chip factories in 2025. The new, as Tone said, the new, I forget if it's prime minister or president in Taiwan, but the new leader, he comes from a more not seeing himself as a Chinese ideology, more of a Taiwanese ideology, and he's in charge till 2028. So China might see this as their last chance before to actually escalate there. I think what impact it would have on Bitcoin, I think Bitcoin's got more than enough security, but the Nasdaq would crash. It would take all of the mining stocks with it. Bitcoin price would probably have a correction, and then just like in the Russian conflict, it would realize that actually
Did
Bitcoin's
we
a
lose
better
Simon,
basis.
or is it me?
It's
Maybe.
you, Tone. We can hear him.
I'll
Simon.
land my plane on this one. But yeah, so the
I think
mining
it's me. I'm
companies
gonna
have a
jump
big.
down and come back.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, the mining companies, I think a lot of the public ones would go bust. You'd have a massive difficulty rate adjustment, and then a lot of the older ASICs would probably become profitable again as Bitcoin price retaliates. But you'd have to take out a bunch of the miners that are that I think something along those. Like, Bitcoin always adjusts to it, but I think it would definitely not be a smooth ride. It would be a rocky ride. This would be bigger impacts than the 2008 financial crisis in terms of a geopolitical event. This would be the biggest event we've ever experienced in our lifetime.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, this is the event that I am kind of worried about. Like, worried as in, this is one scenario that was playing in my head, and I was thinking, okay, everything is fine. Russia, Ukraine, we can say it's still restricted to a region. Israel, Gaza, been going on for ages. It just got escalated. Fine. China, Taiwan. I think that is more economical battle than political battle. I think that's going to have a major impact on every single market, no matter what it is. But yeah, let's see which one is more resilient than the other. That's another story. So, Tone, anything to add to that, or I want to move towards the legacy markets?
Yeah, let's move on to the other markets. I really only have about 40 minutes left. But if you wanted to keep going with Simon, and if someone else joins, then you guys are feel free without me to keep going.
No, perfect. So moving on to legacy markets then. Nasdaq, we talked about it in the last space. We felt that it has the legs, and the Nasdaq and the Nvidia earnings came out. Nasdaq rallied, but the next day was bloodbath. It was a proper bear trap. We basically closed on the previous high, just below it. There was a dump off, to be precise. We basically went up around 1.5% or 1%, and then basically came down around 1.5%. Very rough day for the markets, but Friday was bullish. Nasdaq went into that rip mode and closed above the previous open, which is bullish in my opinion. So that was looking very good. Tone, where are you seeing the markets? Are you in the side of Joe saying that the markets are going to just consolidate over here, or do you think we are in for a ride for the coming weeks?
No, Joe has a good point that whenever the bond yields go up and there is a sell-off in the bond market, that these bond portfolios have to rebalance and they have to sell some of their stocks in order to buy more bonds. Joe has a good point. I don't think that's the main driver. Look, the NVIDIA earnings were good. NVIDIA went up, but remember, NVIDIA is a chip maker. Then, towards the end of the week, this China-Taiwan news that we just talked about, well, guess what? That hurts the rest of the NASDAQ stocks. Like Simon just explained, with Apple and several of the other companies that rely on that relationship. And people probably felt that, like smart investors, and they kind of got out of those markets. And that's what happens. Again, it's just like what we said about Ethereum. You buy the rumor and you sell the news, and there could be a short-term top. Everyone kind of ignored sell in May and go away dynamic. And I've said it before. I've traded long enough that I trust sell in May and go away. And I've seen the markets top and go down for 3 months as of May 1st. And I've seen the markets top and go down for 3 months as of May 31st as well. And during that 30 days of May, it's tricky, right? It's easy to say sell in May and go away, but there's 31 days in May. So it's possible that the markets were rallying, and this is the traditional sell in May dynamic. So the markets could have topped out with NVIDIA's earnings, and we're going to have, a little bit of a consolidated market, maybe a little bit of a pullback here. And then I'm still bullish into the end of year. It's really hard to say. For now, I remain bullish on the overall market. I don't think this pullback is going to be all that traumatic. And we'll see which way things go next week. I think by the end of next week, it'll be a lot clearer where the market's going.
Yeah, sure. We basically see 5 weeks of upside in Dow Jones, right? Last week was a bloodbath. We were down 2.68% overall, like unexpected, or well, you can call it expected, unexpected, but markets did not like it. But on the other hand, NASDAQ and S&P were bullish. But now we have completed 5 weeks of upside in NASDAQ and SPX as well. Is there a scenario over here, Tone, that could play out that maybe Dow Jones was front running these markets, and now S&P and NASDAQ is kind of reaching that level, and we might be seeing negative price action in both of them? Because see, the charts right now are very confusing. Obviously, we are trading higher. Respect that. We have converted previous highs into support. Fine. But on the other hand, the geopolitical scenario, the economic scenario, there was a article that I was reading which was stating that the US debt to GDP ratio will basically cross 250% by 2050. Well, that's a long time from now, 25 years. Not sure if we'll be having spaces by then. But one thing is for sure, that US economy is not really that healthy as it seems. Do you really think, first question is, do you think a correction is expected? Like, do you expect a correction now? Second question, if we do not see an expectation, if we do not see a correction at this point of time, do you think the market has the legs to go higher?
That was for me or for Simon?
Yeah, that's for you, and then we'll go to Simon.
Look, so I think the market has the legs to go higher. Again, Simon presented a bearish side of the Russia-Chinese dynamic. The bullish side of the more global tensions there are, the more people find safety in the US stock market. This is why I've been saying in the beginning of the year that the Dow Jones is the leader. The reason for the Dow Jones is the leader because Dow Jones is international capital flowing to the US, investing in the US stock market. NASDAQ leading is domestic investment in the stock market. So whenever you see the Dow Jones leading, that's international capital. And for the last, 3 to 6 months, the NASDAQ has been leading, showing that the domestic investors are more interested in speculative stocks. Now, if you see NASDAQ pull back hard, and Dow Jones is leading once again, that shows you that there is international interest in still jumping into the US stock market. And this international interest kind of, turned around the stock market to give confidence to the domestic investor. And I kind of see that dynamic happening again. One second.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I agree to that point. Simon, coming to you, the Magnificent Seven in the stock market have performed well. I mean, at least five have performed really well. Two are still recovering. So let me tell you all of them, and then I want a view from you in terms of investment or in terms of the health of the US market, tech market specifically. Nvidia is up 115% so far this year. Meta is up 35%. Alphabet is up 25, Amazon 19, Microsoft is up 14.4. So these are your uptrending stocks. Apple is still down 1.3%, so I would say break even. But Tesla is down around 27 or 28% overall this year. Now, Tesla is one of the more, not in terms of the size, but in terms of the say. For some reason, I feel Tesla is a very, very crucial company in the US stock market. How do you see these performances overall? And where do you see these stocks heading? Do you think Tesla is still a buying opportunity, or do you see anything wrong with Tesla as a company itself?
So the way that I would answer that is maybe slightly different to someone else would, because I don't think the US stock market is based upon market or fundamentals. I think it's just based upon the Fed. And so US still produces these companies produce some of the best technology, most widely adopted all around the world. And so as long as the Fed can keep rolling over its Ponzi scheme, they will do well. Because the Fed has said that we're no longer a free market. We don't let prices crash, and we don't let real estate crash. And for as long as we can do that, we will do that. So I'm still, I'm betting on the Fed in that question, and I still think that America's producing some of the best technology ever. Until it's not, and that would be back to the Taiwan conversation. I'd be more bullish on a US that is aligned with Taiwan without a China tensions. But if China actually became peacefully reunified, and I don't know how that would happen, with Taiwan, then I think they would have a massive edge on the technology market. So when I'm answering that question, I'm only really answering two things: what will the Fed do, and what will the Chinese government do? And if the Chinese government doesn't do anything, and the Fed continues to do what it does, and there's no disturbances, then I'm bullish on all those stocks as usual. Now, what I think would be really interesting, and I think the real question, I'd love to hear Tony's perspective on this as well, is imagine a scenario where the fundamentals of Bitcoin prevail and it's not correlated to the stock market. I'm not sure if that is the scenario right now. But if it weren't and people fully understood Bitcoin, then it wouldn't be. I'm not sure if all these ETF buyers do understand Bitcoin. But imagine a scenario where there is a massive sell-off in the stock market and everyone just goes straight into the Bitcoin ETF that drives a massive amount of buying into spot Bitcoin. That is what the most logical scenario would be in reaction to any kind of these these external events or internal disruption. Now, whether the market is that logical or not, I'm not quite sure, but it would be really interesting if Bitcoin actually just became the Bitcoin ETF just started sucking up all of the volume from all of these overpriced stocks in a kind of a real rapid fire, I guess, one of those speculative attack events that we've always been talking about that exists with Bitcoin.
I heard all that, Simon, but I'm not really sure where the question lies.
All right. Do you imagine a scenario? So, firstly, how correlated do you think Bitcoin now would be to the stock market? And could you imagine a scenario where a bunch of all the stock market volume in some kind of event goes into the Bitcoin ETF and then creates like a loop where that creates lots of Bitcoin buy and you have a crash in the stocks and a pump in Bitcoin ETF? Do you think that could happen?
I think it could happen, but again, there's always stocks that go up, right? So it's what we said earlier, right? If stocks that are dependent on Taiwanese chips crash, what goes up? Well, sure, Bitcoin can go up, but so will stocks that are trying to revive the chip making industry in the US. They'll also go up, again, like an NVIDIA and some of the other competitors to this Taiwan dominated industry. So there's always elements of the economy that goes up. It's almost, see, I don't really envision that scenario because it's almost like saying that the short ETFs would dominate the stock market when stocks crash, right? Because the short ETFs go up. Uh, and yes, they do go up, but they don't, suck out everything, right? Because remember, the guy that's shorting the stocks will benefit, and this is why shorting stocks is a legitimate means of profiting because it's that short seller that eventually buys the stock at the low price and supports the market when it starts to go down. So while the Bitcoin ETFs certainly can benefit, I don't see them having that drastic of an effect.
Simon, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's some interesting game theory. I think it's going to be a really interesting one for us all to watch.
Yeah, perfect. Moving on to Dixie, Tone. So trading at its 200-day moving average, we basically it started to feel that as if it's going to have a good time. Like after last week was going fine, we were seeing bullish price action, looking good for a while, and then suddenly Friday was not a good day.
Wait, I'm sorry. Moving on to what? I missed the asset name.
DXY.
DXY. Okay, dollar. Okay, cool.
Yeah, dollar. So where do you see it heading? Because I mean, as of now, we are still trading above the 200-day moving average, if I'm not wrong. It is still taking support on it. So hopefully we can bounce again off it, and it can show strength. But on the other hand, like the charts are telling me that it wants to go lower. The charts are telling me it wants to go towards that $100 mark over the course of next couple of months. What are you seeing? What's your insight on DXY? I know your thesis is simple. You see dollar getting stronger and stronger long term, but in a shorter period, what do you expect? You're muted, Tone.
Oh, yep, I was. I think it can certainly go down in the short term, but overall, people just have to understand that the dollar is generally measured against the euro. The euro, some Japanese yen, some British pound, some Canadian dollar, but it's mostly the euro. And all you have to do is look at the dollar euro pair. And at the moment, the euro is doing pretty good, but I'm overall pretty bearish on the euro in total. And once the dollar finds support, maybe at that 200 moving average or another, traditional technical indicator, because they kind of tend to line up, I see the dollar rallying once again. I mean, yes, the United States is starting all this trouble around the world, but at the end of the day, while the United States is doing everything they can for the entire world to lose trust in its economic transparency and its economic dominance, for now they're still at at the fastest three-legged horse in the race. So as long as that's happening, and Bitcoin is certainly not ready for prime time, Bitcoin doesn't have the means to become the global reserve currency. Maybe in 10 years it will, but not yet. So for now, I still think the dollar needs to rise before it crashes. And the huge rise in the dollar would be very bad for the United States industries. I mean, the United States is already not very competitive. And once the US dollar becomes super strong, the United States will not be competitive at all with countries like Mexico and Southeast Asia and Vietnam and India, uh, the Chinese car manufacturing. This is something people are really sleeping on. I live down in Panama. And I don't have a car in Panama, so I Uber everywhere. Thank God Uber is cheap. I get like my Uber says you like the name of a car. I'm like I've never heard of this car, and these are Chinese cars. Panama has a lot of Chinese manufactured cars, Chinese brands. They're freaking amazing. You can buy a $20,000 brand new SUV from a Chinese company with all the bells and whistles of a $60,000 BMW, and you cannot tell a difference. What in fact, you're probably sitting in a more luxurious car. Um, eventually, eventually, that is gonna take effect, and it's not just China. Other countries are gonna help manufacture those cars as well. So there's lots and lots of uh, lots of these kinds of situations that would uh, that would help them stay competitive. So I just wanted to throw that in there at some point.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. Welcome, Joe. How are you?
Oh, awesome, Joe's here.
Hey, good morning. Sorry I'm late, guys.
No, no, that's fine. We were early. You're not late. It's Sunday, and we don't expect you to be early. So, Joe, I mean, we have already talked about this topic, but since you're here, ETTF, it is approved. It is approved. Did you?
Yeah,
Were
we knew that
your
last
birds?
time we talked. We knew that last time we talked.
No, no, no. Last time we talked, we were discussing that it might be approved or not, because last time we
No,
talked, we were
I think I
getting
told
news
you
that they're submitting forms.
it was a lock. Once they started telling the issuers to update their 19Bs, it was a lock. I mean, it was. I know that there was a
Ah,
few
okay.
folks that thought otherwise. I think Tone was still skeptical, but I'm telling you, like once you tell the issuers go do all this work, and then I mean, it makes no sense for them to do an about face and say no, it's not coming. So anyway, that was just
Yeah,
my
no, Joe. You made a really good argument that you were pretty positive it was coming, but I believe that our consensus was it's not going to come this week. It'll be
well.
on
It might. Well, just to
next
be
round.
clear, we're not going to. It might not trade for about 6 months even. You know, there's a potential it could not. It won't trade till even after the
Yeah,
election.
that's a good point.
So the key thing is it's coming, right? And the most important story, and I've said this in a couple rooms, so I apologize if you heard this again. The most important story is that there's been both public and private reporting at this point that there was a concern that it was potentially going to appear to be anti-crypto if there was a delay, and there's now a concerted effort among the Trump campaign and the Republican caucus to paint this issue of the Dems being anti-crypto as a wedge issue for the election. So this is all about pushing buttons for the election. That's why Fit 21 got called for a vote, knowing it will never even make the floor in the Senate. You got to remember the House is Republican controlled. So they wanted to push this issue and force Dems to get on the record voting for or against it, to use it as a wedge issue during the election. It's why Trump took that question from the Zoomer in the whatever or Pit Vipers, where a few weeks back, where he sort of planted the seed about his position, saying he was going to protect crypto. It's why yesterday he gave that speech where he said he's going to keep Elizabeth Warren and his goons and her goons off your crypto and Bitcoin. This is all going to ratchet up. I expect it to be, it's a clear indication right now. I expect it to be raised in the debates whenever Trump can. And the Trump campaign thinks they can peel off, somewhere between 3 to 5% of younger voters in a key demographic, which is fatal to the Biden campaign, that are passionate about crypto and to a lesser extent Bitcoin. I think that is the key thing that they're focused on, trying to drive these little micro issues so that it's possible they have an effect in swing counties across the country. Because you got to remember, it's going to be like a couple dozen swing counties across the country that decide the election. That's how close it's going to be.
Hey Jay, do you think there's in the debate? Do you reckon like they've all got to brush up on all their crypto knowledge because someone's going to do a gotcha event to make them look like they don't have a clue what they're talking about?
I think the Biden administration needs to make a message on crypto. I think they're still very haphazard in their approach. Keep in mind, up until a few weeks ago, they were embracing Elizabeth Warren talking points. Now they've done a total about face. The White House issued a press statement that they look forward to engaging with lawmakers on sensible crypto legislation. That was after FIT 21 got passed out of the House. So I'm interested to see what it is, right? Because you have to kind of thread the needle. This is always the trouble with being, at high levels of the Democratic Party. You have to pacify the hard leftists, which make up your base, okay, the Elizabeth Warren crowds, and you also have to speak to some of the more moderates. And you got to remember, one of the most powerful Democrats in the Senate, Chuck Schumer in New York, he voted for FIT 21. He expressed support for it. Rather, he didn't vote for it because he didn't call it. But Nancy Pelosi voted for it, right? Nancy Pelosi voted for FIT 21, which is the pro crypto industry bill. So you've got a divergent party. You've got people that are all over the spectrum, and I'm really interested to see where Biden comes down, because I think it's purposeful that he hasn't taken a position on any of these issues, and he's going to have to, because he will be faced with somebody else who's going to be full throated. I'm supported. I mean, if you heard that speech, Simon, I think you did yesterday, that where he gave at a libertarian conference. I mean, it's clear that he's going above and beyond. What he needs to say to promote this as a wedge issue. So, I'm interested to see what the response is. You have to have some response, and their current response is silence.
Hey guys, I'm gonna jump off for a few minutes, but I'm gonna be back. So keep going with the space. It's going really well. I'm gonna be. I gotta drive somewhere, but I'm gonna reconnect in about 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, Tone, I also have max 15 minutes after this. I have to head off. So hopefully you join back before that, and we can carry on. But I have
Oh
a
no,
few.
if it's 10:15, I'm just gonna stay on then.
Yeah, it's 10:15. I remember I told you I can't. I have to be somewhere at 5. So yeah. Moving on. The next topic of discussion, Joe, I'll start off with you. Let me get my document. Where is my document gone? 1 second, guys. I'm so sorry. It vanished on me. Dun, 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 dun. Yep, there you are. Open up. Yes, I have it. So, Joe, we were talking about last week. We were talking a lot about yield and everything, and you were pointing out that if yields rally, we see a sell-off in stock market. If am I right in that?
Yeah.
And then it happened. It happened on the day of Nvidia earnings. The next day we saw yields rally. The market came crashing down, and then Friday was a bullish day for the market. But what are you seeing right now? What
Again,
are you
I mean,
expecting?
so what I'm expecting is yields to rise, and I still think that they're completely mispriced. I mean, so you had this CPI print, and then they caught a bid from it, from a hot print, which made no sense to me. And I think, Tone, you said the exact same thing at the time. Like, why are bonds getting bid and yields falling with CPI core, super core running where it was running? And to me, like, which was hot. I didn't make any sense to me. So it's as is typical in the markets, right? You get this sort of weird reaction in the short run. I think the market was probably positioned for hot in a print. We got a sort of hot print. And what ended up happening is that it moved the other way, right? Squeezing people that were probably positioned correctly based on the fundamentals. That's just the way markets work sometimes. Now it's sold off again, right? It's approaching higher levels that it was at the beginning of May. I expect it to take out that, and I think they're going to continue to sell off. And I am probably one of the few people that I don't talk to many people out there, but I expect yields to go higher by the end of the year because the economy is not close to recession, and we'll see what happens then. But I find it difficult I think this is what I was saying. I expect chop in a lot of these asset classes as yields rise because I think, and I know Tone disagrees, so we don't have to talk about that again. But I expect that as the yields continue to rise, you're going to see a lot of choppy price action, and I think that's what you've seen sort of in the equity market. It goes up, it goes down. I mean, look at the price action we had, last week. You're just bouncing around, slow, sort of choppy price action. We probably ended the week up, I think, a little bit, but you're not getting like the thrust forward in the market, upward price action breakout that I think people are expecting. And the reason is because they have to do that in the face of higher yields, which is a natural reflexive draw of capital from the equity market. Again, like you're only we're about 30 days away from quarter end repositioning. Just to give you an idea, if bonds sell off another 25 basis points by the end of the year. That's going to be by the I can't remember the firm that put this out. But I forget the name, but it's going to be about 30 to 40 um, $1 billion of additional draws on the equity market, just without even any active managers. You're going to have 40 billion pulled out of equities because the passive strategies then have to sell their equities to rebalance into the bonds by just a 25 basis point move. Now, to put that in perspective, since the beginning of the quarter, I think we've had almost 75 bip move on some of these parts of the curve. So just think about how equity markets continue to have this sustained rally in the face of higher yields. Now, if the yields come crashing down and inflation is tame, like equities will explode higher, and so will Bitcoin and everything else. But that's just my view. People feel free to disagree with it.
Tone, you agree with that or disagree? Because I know you disagree, Tone.
Oh,
We can hear you.
yeah, that was weird. I got a weird pop up. Look, Joe and I are generally agree. We just have minor like disagreements on where demand's coming from and where supply is coming from. Joe has a very good point on rebalancing of the portfolios. I believe I talked about it prior to Joe jumping on this stream. But overall, I see just a bigger trend. To me, this dynamic between the U.S. rebalancing of portfolios is uh, less important than the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is international desire for holding U.S. Uh, government bonds, especially the longer maturities. Anything 10 years and above is international money is very, very scared. Now, Europeans have been picking up the slack where Russia, China dropped off. Japan been going back and forth. But lately, we saw Japan go a little bit in their own direction because they're seeing that following U.S. guidance of economics for the last 30 years has not done Japan many favors. And I think we're starting to see a change in Europe. I think Europe is finally, I'm seeing the very first signs, and I don't have anything specific to point to, but with the assassination attempt on FISO and like Germany arguing with France over the Russia situation, I just see Europe starting to. I mean, there's only so many bonds Liechtenstein can buy. It's a tiny freaking country, and they've been one of the leaders in buying U.S. government bonds. I just think that this European demand for U.S. government bonds is about to end. Like I said, I don't have. It's just something I'm anticipating. And what? One second, hold on. I have a relative here with me who's literally a trader and runs a fund. He wants to tell me something. Give me 1 second, guys.
Okay.
uh, yeah. So anyway, so I do see this dynamic, and then who's going to buy U.S. bonds? There's only so much that the U.S. domestic consumer can buy into the U.S. government debt. I mean, look, Japan's been doing it for a long time. Maybe the U.S. will get there. I just see a bigger picture that there, like this 40-60 portfolio thing. I think they're gonna stop. I think they're gonna just weasel a way around it if they don't remove that kind of unspoken rule or written rule. I just don't see that as the big picture over the next few years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, Tone is right. I'll just say that about the fact that U.S. households have been the single biggest buyer of treasuries over the last 2 years. There's some public reporting that it's like upwards of 7 or 8% or 70 or 80% of all treasuries issued in the last 2 years have been purchased by U.S. consumers, U.S. households. And U.S. institutions as well, because the pension funds still buy it in the United States too, because it helps them meet their liability asset mismatch. So you have a lot of buying from U.S. consumers, and the interesting thing to me is that, okay, well, there clearly still is demand for U.S. long bonds because the curve is inverted, right? Right now you wouldn't expect to see a 10-year at 4.4% and the 2-year at 4.9%. Obviously, the 2-year is more sensitive to what the Fed is doing because 2-year is a closer match to what Fed policy is. But if there were truly no demand, then why isn't the 10-year above 5%? And I think there still is demand from U.S. households, but to Tone's point, to like any market, you have to look at where the next marginal buyer is coming from. And to me, that's the big story. I think this whole story about what recessions and where we're going from here and fiscal dominance and all this stuff people talk about, it all comes back to the treasury market. And is there going to be sufficient demand from U.S. households to hold the market under that 5% cap? Because if you remember, if you look at the equity markets over the last couple years, the equity markets start to go into violent sell-offs when you're breaking that 5%. October last year, right, we were selling off hard, and that's basically when the yields peaked. Same thing goes for the year before. The bond market was in turmoil where Janet Yellen was having to make comments about treasury market liquidity, and that was when the gilts market was blowing up. Once yields rise sufficiently, and I think that the sort of the real key level that Caesar crossing the Rubicon is that 5% level. If the 5% level gets taken out, I think that hurts asset prices. So that's what I watch, and clearly they've been sufficiently been able to keep it under that mark for 2 years now, despite a Fed funds rate of 5.35%.
Cool. Moving on to the last topic of the day is the next things that are coming, the economic data for next week. We are expecting US GDP to come in next week. A few earnings here and there, but I don't think any of them is major player that's going to happen. That's my personal opinion. If I'm wrong, please let me know. Please add to them. So let me just go through each one of them and then your views on it, guys. What are you expecting for next week? What sort of price action you're expecting apart from choppiness? Like, do you expect bullish choppiness, bearish choppiness? What sort of things? So we have PCE inflation coming out. We have US GDP coming out. We have Fed beige book. I'm not sure what that is. So please educate me on that, Tone or Joe or Simon, any one of you. We have earnings coming out for Dell, for AI, for Costco, BBY, and ANF. So few earnings coming out. So first of all, what is this Fed beige book, guys? Anyone can tell me about it?
Yeah. So all that happens is at the various different Fed banks, so the Federal Reserve banks across the country, they collect really stories and interviews and anecdotes from individuals in positions that they have connections with. It's very much an anecdotal display of information where they're trying to distill the feel of the economy with certain micro data points. Okay, I talked to a hair clipper manufacturer based out of the Midwest, or another Fed governor can say, I've talked to some of the regional banking heads in Texas at the Dallas Fed, right? And they compile it together along with some statistics. And the whole point of it is they're trying to give sort of a more less of a pure data driven analysis. It's more of an anecdotal interview type overview of the economy about certain key sectors that are thought to be bellwethers for economic growth and activity. So, it's a fascinating read. I actually think it's more interesting sometimes than some of just the raw data they could spit out, because a lot of the raw data is model based, which, as a market participant, I favor market based signals over modeling done by economists. The econometric models are notoriously bad at predicting, real economic growth, and I think that's borne out by a lot of data. I would much rather look at the 10-year and the 2-year trading with real money than people's models that they put together, which are invariably flawed. Anyway, that's just my view.
Tone?
Yeah, no, Joe explained it really, really well. And yeah, other economic metrics are good. I am looking forward to the GDP print. I think it's going to be completely in line with with the expectation. Remember, the GDP print is like the one print that's directly coming out of the Biden administration. As I've said it on this space over the last year, is going to be directly in line. It's not going to. It's definitely not going. They're not going to print anything that's going to potentially endanger Biden's reelection. We'll see how these prints go during the next presidency, especially if it's a Trump presidency. We'll see how in line they'll be. I'm expecting it to be directly in line, like the prior one, like the one before that. They're not going to play with the numbers too much. And that's the, I don't know, like to me, GDP is like the least trusted uh, economic number that comes out. That in general, that's the one I trust the least. That's also the one with the I hate the formula of that. Probably even more so than the inflation numbers with CPI. PCE is going to be coming out as well. That one is fairly critical. So we'll see. Looking forward to it. Uh, I'm really curious how the stock market does next week. It's hard for me to. I have no expectation one way or another for next week's stock market. But when we do the space next weekend, I will certainly have plenty of comments and speculations on what I expect the stock market to do over the month of June.
Very well. All right, guys, that's it from me today. Any closing thoughts, starting with Simon? Simon, any closing thoughts for you for this space?
Yeah, I'd just say following up on like Joe's conversation on where is the buyers of bonds coming. I think the most interesting thing to watch is the crypto regulation bills leading to a stablecoin regulation bill, because it's pretty clear to me that the demand comes from stablecoins. And stablecoins, if it moves into tokenized bank deposits, it is radical banking reform, where the government essentially sucks up a lot of the demand for investment away from the traditional banking model, which is real estate. So I think that's the one to watch as the whole story of where does the demand for treasuries come from in the future.
Joe?
Yeah, it's too bad we have to cut off because this is a really interesting discussion, and I always respect Simon's views, but I've heard this about quite a bit about stablecoins are going to be the saving grace in the U.S. Treasury market, and I have real doubts about it. And the entire stablecoin industry right now is a couple $100 billion, right? And let's say that grows like a 10x. Okay, let's say you get to $2 or $3 trillion, like in which is huge, right? That would be a big, massive player. They're going to issue by government projections somewhere between, I think it's going to, but in the next 10 years, 15 years, you're going to get into that 40 to $50 trillion handle. So the notion, because that's what the CBO projects, right? They expect the government to double. The notion that a $3 or $4 trillion stablecoin market, which would be more than a 10x from current levels, is going to save a 40 to $50 trillion treasury issuance that's going to come out. I just don't understand that math, and I'll never understand it. I think they can be a player, they can be more impactful, but you're going to need whales that are far bigger than a few $1 trillion in stables to save the market. And we all know where the whale is in the place is, who the whale is. It's the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve through monetization action is likely going to have to, be the one who comes in to take care of that market. And I don't think stable coins, while it'll be helpful, are going to be a significant factor in that marketplace, just given the size. And keep in mind, stable coins, their source of liquidity is largely it's largely used in trading platforms right now, like that. So you have to see what is going to happen with these trading platforms if the stable coin that are licensed and permitted. I do not believe they will be allowed on certain trading platforms based on some information I have. So that's going to be very interesting. Like, is there going to be the demand for USDC and Tether sufficient to give liquidity to those markets if the U.S. stablecoin bill says no, you can't trade these on crypto exchanges? Because I think it totally changes the complexion of what that marketplace is. But I'm sorry to get off on a tangent. I'll just say for the week, I completely agree with Tone. I don't really have a good read this week, where I expect equities to go. I'm still looking at the yields on that market, and I want them to cool off. I think you can have a breakout here. I think it's very possible with the incredible earnings report, which I didn't get to talk about with NVIDIA. I mean, NVIDIA blew the doors off with that report. Anybody who thinks that is like a bubble, who's looking at that earnings report and the growth they show, I mean, their numbers were fantastic, and their forward guidance was fantastic. So I didn't get to talk about that. I'll just mention that that was the catalyst. We should have seen a significant breakup higher on. Maybe it's delayed, and like I said, we got a sort of a head fake on that day after the price action where it sold off and actually closed red. Maybe we'll get the breakout this week, but man, that NVIDIA report did exactly what we needed for sort of a signal to move higher in all these risk assets.
And ending off with Tone. Tone, anything to add?
Hey guys, can you hear me? My Bluetooth
Yeah.
switched to the car. Okay, cool.
Yeah, we can.
No, Joe, great comments on NVIDIA. I'm just gonna comment on Bitcoin. Not in front of a chart, but I don't need to be. I see the price right now, 69,200. We are dealing with a holiday weekend. The stock market may be pulling back, and Bitcoin is generally correlated. But I think I see Bitcoin being very, very bullish. I'm loving this consolidation over the last week or so. We've now held 69,000 for a good 3 days. We're probably going to hold 69,000 into Tuesday's stock market open. And whether the stock market goes up or down next week, I'm going to be bullish on Bitcoin. I think that pretty soon I'm going to be saying 70,000 may not be seen ever, like I am about 60,000. Though I'm never going to say that about 80K. I think ultimately, once Bitcoin does find a top this cycle, we are going to pull back below 100,000. Somewhere between 75 and 95,000 will be the ultimate correction after the top. But right now, we've consolidated in this area for so long, it's creating an amazing floor for the next, for this entire cycle, basically. And I'm going to leave it there.
Lovely, Tone. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks a lot for joining in. We will be talking again in midweek, whether it's Wednesday or Thursday. We will post out the tweet, and I hope all the listeners are available. I hope our speakers are available as well. And Joe, promise you, we'll dive a little more into the stablecoin thing, so that you can have a chat with Simon. Simon, be free. Please try to be free if you can. It would be great to have you again. Thanks a lot, guys. Enjoy your bank holiday weekend and have fun.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, guys. Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Pleasure, guys.